All right, raise your hand high in the sky. If you've ever been on a phone call or a Zoom call, someone comes to your door and your dog goes wild, banshee crazy, and you're kind of embarrassed because you can't find the mute button fast enough. Yeah, my hand's high up in the sky, and I'm guessing yours maybe too, if you have a dog. Oh man. So if you've ever followed my Instagram stories, you know that we just got a cute little puppy. And I wanted to prevent the embarrassment, or maybe it's not embarrassment, just the uncomfortableness of trying to get the dog to be quiet, pay attention in the meeting. And so we reached out to a trainer, and as she's taking us through this process, I'm like, oh my gosh, I bet others have this problem too. Especially now that a lot of us are working from home and we're virtual, dog barking can be an issue. And so I'm like, Kathy, you want to come on and do a podcast episode? And she's like, sure. So today's podcast episode, we're going to dive into just how to train your dog, things you can do to help your dog not go wild, banshee crazy. Now, if you haven't heard of Kathy Santos, get ready. She has the street creds list like no one's business when it comes to dog training. She's been featured on Martha Stewart show, CBS. She's been in Good Housekeeping, writing articles. She's the featured columnist for the AKC. They've actually named her the master trainer. So I felt super privileged to be able to work with her with Goose and wanted to bring some of this expertise to you. Now, a handful of you have reached out and asked about what about our other dog. So I'm going to just give you a real brief synopsis on what happened with the other dog, Lucy, that we brought out to Puerto Rico. We've had Lucy for about 10 years. And after COVID, we were getting her on an airplane to go back to Utah, and the airline said that they no longer allow dogs to get on airplanes. And we're like, wait, what? And they said we'd have to crate her, and they don't do crating. Anyway, it was just kind of this little bit of a fiasco. And so when we got back, we finally said, this is our dog. It's like a family member. We have to take her home. So they let us on the airplane. We get back to Utah, and then we just kept thinking, how are we going to get Lucy back to Puerto Rico? What happens if we get in the airport again and they don't let us on the airplane with her? What do we do? What do we do? And so Michaela, she had a brilliant idea and said, hey, I'm going to college and I'm going to miss my family. What about you leave Lucy here with me and I'll have someone to talk to and to cuddle with? And we said, that's a great idea. So we ended up leaving Lucy with Michaela in Utah while she's at college. And we came back to Puerto Rico. Things start to simmer down and we really miss a dog. We're a dog family. We love having a little buddy around us. It just, I don't know, some people are dog people. We're dog people. And so last Christmas, we decided to get another dog because Michaela is not going to let Lucy go. So we ended up getting a little sheepadoodle and we named him Goose. And he's literally like a pillow with 4 legs. He walks around. He's this big fluff animal. And so as soon as we got Goose, we knew we needed a trainer. And Kathy has really opened our eyes on how to train dogs. And so that's why I wanted to bring her into today's podcast episode. So get ready to take massive notes. And at the end, you're going to find out where you can get more information on her training. And I'm going to highly, highly recommend that everybody that has a dog do this training. It is literally like, I wish I would have had this. If we could roll back the time to the very first time I had a dog, I wish I would have known the stuff that Kathy taught. Can you hear him barking right now? Yeah, we're still in the learning process, apparently. If you are on Zoom, if you're on YouTube, I'll show you the Goose right here. He says hi. If you're on a podcast, know that this dog just passed 20 pounds. And yeah, he's letting his voice be known on today's podcast episode. So let's dig in. Apparently, I'm going to be re-listening to this because we're still working on it. All right, let's get started. Okay, so dive in. Tell us a little about your backstory, why you were considered the dog whisperer, and I will attest to that. You know how to talk to a dog. and you know how to tell other people how to talk to dogs.
Okay, so if we're gonna go way back in the way back machine, I was 5 years old and I had a dog, and I knew that I wanted to be a dog trainer, which is weird because I didn't know any dog trainers, and our dog wasn't trained. But my parents, when I was like, I guess 7 or 8, took her to dog training school,
Mhm.
and she failed. And I thought, oh, I can do better than that. 'Cause, you know, you're a kid, you think you can do better than your parents all the time. So, unbeknownst to them, I went to the refrigerator and I got some of the deli meat and I just started figuring it out. And I got her to sit and spin and lie down. And I remember doing a show for them, like, hey, look what I taught her. And they were like semi impressed, but no, it was really good. I will tell you, it was really good. And a funny story, like when I was 30, I was telling them about that. And my mother was like, are you kidding me right now? You did what with that deli meat? Like, I used it for her. She was like, I changed delicatessens 3 times and accused them of shorting me because
Oh my
I
gosh,
would
you
buy
were
a
taking it
pound.
all.
So yeah, that's where it all began.
That's
Um,
so funny.
so that's where it started, and it was just basic stuff like that, not really competing or anything. I left home when I was 19, and the last thing she said to me as I pulled out of the driveway was, "Don't get a dog." And I'm like, "Oh, that's what I'm gonna do." Um, they weren't really into me going to college because I was a girl. Isn't that weird? So I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it myself. So I left and I went down to Atlanta and I got a dog from the shelter, and that's where it all started. Sure. And then it's just we'll just fast forward through getting a purebred, starting to compete, having a mentor for competition work, and then just sort of winning everything. And then at 21, she wanted me to tour the country with her, teaching other people how to do competition obedience. And these are like veterans, they'd been in it for a long time. And they were like, well, how do you know this? I'm like, I don't know. And literally, that's what it was. It was just a language that I seemed to be programmed to understand that was coming out of me. So I did that. And then I had kids. I had my son, and we moved back to Jersey. And I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to do my own dogs. And that quickly, like in 2 weeks, people were asking me, like, can you help me with my dog? I heard you're a dog trainer. Somehow along the line, I don't even remember how it happened, but Random House heard of me and wanted to publish my book. And they did. I went on a book tour, and then I started appearing on Martha. Then House Beautiful made me contributing editor. And I was writing a column for them for years. AKC wanted me to write for them. They actually interviewed me about the book, and they were like, hey, it's too bad we didn't talk to you a week ago because Caesar Milan is going to write our column about dog training. And she goes, but it's so annoying because I have to write it. His people said, we'll put his name on it, but we're not going to write it. You have to
Oh,
write it.
wow.
I said,
Wow.
wait, and you're going to pay him? And she said, yeah. And I'm like, well, just pay me and I'll write it for you. She's like, all right, you got the gig. So
Sold.
14 years later, I'm still writing that column. And then just everything else that came from it. Just, I don't even know how. So currently, I've just moved my school that I had in 1,500 square feet to 16,000 square feet. We've been there about a year.
Oh
I
my
see 400 or
gosh.
500 dogs a week. Um, and I do AKCTV. I'm their master trainer. I have a charity, Pause for Autism, for people, young adults with autism. I don't know all of it. I train dogs, and it's amazing. It's the best life ever.
Oh my gosh, so impressive. So impressive. And I love that it started at your journey of 5 years old. I think at 5 years old, I was like, I want to be a veterinarian. I just want to play with animals all day long. But I grew out of
Yeah,
that, right? And you didn't. Like, that was your true calling, and you're sticking with it in a ginormous facility, training
yeah.
so many dogs.
It's like it is literally the best life ever. I wake up every single day and I say, I can't wait to, and not only to train the dogs, but to be with those people and to be with my team. I have like 50 people on the team now, and
Wow.
I'm very blessed. There you go.
It's your dream job.
It
It's your
is.
dream job. Okay, so walk us through the process of getting a dog, like how to choose a dog, if we can do that, because I know you helped me. You're helping a gal named Julie Stoyan. How to choose a dog that's right for your family, and then some basic training things on how to work when you have a dog in the background.
Yes, a big topic lately in the last year, right?
Yes.
So This has been for me in my career. I've been doing this over 30 years, like 35 years. God, come on.
Is that when
And
you started when you were 5?
yes, there you go. We're going to go with that. I had my children when I was 7. Okay.
Perfect.
So everybody wanted a dog. And I don't think my biggest thing when all of this went down a year ago, all of this meaning the Rona, was I worried about the students that we had, their dogs getting overstimulated, over cuddled, over all of the things, overstressed. And so that was our main focus. But pretty quickly we realized that not only was that what our main focus should be, but we had to split off into people wanting to get another dog. And some of them just grabbed a dog. And there are some dogs that I don't think are great fits, but you dance with the one you brung. And so you always get the dog you're supposed to have, even if it turns out to be something you didn't expect or didn't really want to handle. But when people come to me and say, I want a dog, can you help me choose it? That's my favorite thing, because I have a great puppy picker. So if I'm puppy picking or picking a dog, like I just get a sense. I see the dog's background from the breeders or the shelter, that's good too. But I can feel dogs. So what I tell everybody to do is create a wish list. Like, what do you want in a dog? What is your purpose? That's the big thing we're going to be going back to every time we look at a dog or we talk about looking at a puppy. Do you want them to be super animated? Do you want them to be brilliantly smart, which also is not really a great thing because they outthink you.
Yes, they
Is it for
can.
you? Is it for your dogs? Is it for your family members? Because if you're picking a dog and it's your first dog, that's easy. But if you're picking a dog to go with a dog that you have, that's a little bit harder because you really have to personality match dog to dog. And I know people just grab dogs and they work out and that's fine. But if we're talking about a system, if we're talking about things to consider, that's a really big one. And sometimes what you want and what you should have are two different things, kind of like in relationships. And so you want a really energetic dog and you want a bigger dog, right? Because that's what you had as a kid. But maybe your mother-in-law is using a walker and maybe you can't get out to give this dog the exercise you used to do when you were growing up. So these are considerations that you really have to take into account. The purpose of the dog is important too, or is this going to be a hiking companion? Do you want to do therapy dog work? Do you just want it to lay there and look cute so you can take pictures and post them to Instagram?
Yeah, I'm doing that right now.
Yeah, exactly. So reality is important. Like, be honest with yourself. You have to look at energy level. What can you handle? The size of the dog. Do you have a really small place? Well, probably don't get a field Labrador, right? Although you could get a Great Dane or a racing greyhound, because although they're large, they're pretty chill. Not that every dog, you can't stereotype, but in general they are. Look at the coat of the dog. You look at those dogs with a lot of coat and those haircuts. You're like, that's amazing. But did you know you have to brush them pretty much every day? And every 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to a groomer and paying them money to do that. So that's something to take into consideration as well. And certain breeds have certain needs above and beyond the things that you're going to be willing to do. So, for example, one of my students has a Frenchie, and every day I have to put, because I'm watching him now, every day I have to put coconut oil on his nose and clean the folds of his face twice a day. Plus, I have a thing of baby wipes because he doesn't always go to the bathroom neatly. So I
Oh
had to baby wipe
man.
him. It's easier for a puppy boot camp. So I knew all this stuff going into it, but these are the things you have to think about.
Okay, so good, so good. And then don't you have a few ways to test whether the puppy is how the puppy reacts when you're choosing one from a litter? I know you've talked about that a few times. I've heard you talk about.
Yes, so I just puppy tested a litter for Julie. And what I was looking for were a few specific and unique things. First of all, let's talk about the sound test. So I wanted these puppies in an environment that they weren't and had never been in before. And I also wanted them individually away from their litter mates, because sometimes the way a puppy acts, he's got the confidence behind him. He's got litter mates that maybe he can like look to for direction. So I like to see the puppy by itself to get a really good feel of how they'll be in a household. So one of the tests we do is we make a sound that's startling. And in this case, what we used was a metal food bowl. And when the puppy wasn't looking, we dropped it a few feet away, not near the puppy. And what I want to see is recovery. I know they're going to startle. I would jump if that happened, but it doesn't matter to me that that they startle, because that's normal. But what I want to see is, do they investigate it? Do they say, "Oh hell no, I'm never going there again"? Like what's their trait? And also understand, in puppy testing, it's a snapshot of this puppy in the moment, right? So you could be having a bad day or an off day, but you take this information and you pair it with what the breeder tells you, because they see the litter all day, every day, and you can pretty much get a good sense of the puppy. Another one is their physical sensitivity. So if I'm testing a puppy to be in a service role or with children, a busy household, I don't want a dog who's physically oversensitive, nor do I want a dog who is super, super tough. So the puppy test that we do, we take that little paw, and right between the webbing, we do a little bit of a pressure. It's not a pinch, it's a pressure. And we're looking for the puppy to say, "Ooh, that's uncomfortable." And so if we just barely touch it and he's screaming, we know that's a high physical sensitivity. And if we are squeezing hard and the puppy's like, "Yeah, that's all you got," then we know that's a really physically tough puppy. And then that relates to, okay, the collars you're using for walking and things like that. What I'm also looking for in that test is a forgiveness. So when the puppy is uncomfortable, do they try to bite the tester? Do they pull away? Do they kiss and lick the tester like, "Oh, hey, that's kind of uncomfortable"? And then part two of that is, when they put the puppy down, what does that puppy do? Does he look at the tester and go, "I never want to see you again"? Or do they suck up and say, "Hey, about that thing, it's okay. Like, I'm not really okay with it"? Or is it somewhere in the middle? So those are two really important tests to me, because they're going to tell me a lot about the puppy.
Okay, love it, love it. Okay, so we found the perfect puppy. We brought it home. We are on Zooms now. People are knocking at the door. How do we control our puppy? Speaking of puppy, okay, I just had to look. Mine's sleeping right outside the door right here. No one else is in
There,
home. That's why
Goose
he's
is
quiet.
like, "Kathy's there, I better behave."
Yeah, he knows your voice.
All right. So with a puppy, you have to understand that, number one, puppies don't have future things. So when they have to go to the bathroom, they're like, "Oh, I gotta go." And then they go, which is just, they'll grow out of it. They'll get more mature, but they don't have the foresight to say, "Hey, I gotta go. Here's a signal. Like, can we go out right now?" So when you're going to get on a Zoom call with a young puppy, first thing you should do is make sure all that puppy's biological needs have been met. And the biggest one, of course, is housebreaking. Take him outside, putting him in his potty area, confirming that he went, because I'm standing there holding the leash, and then I can go back in. And then you have to decide who your puppy is for the next piece to really work. And so for me, I would say, okay, I'm doing this Zoom call. I know I'm going to be talking to you. So I'm going to potty my young puppy an hour before, and I'm going to do some playing and training. So I'm going to get a brain tired and a body tired puppy. And then about 10 minutes before I get on camera, I'm going to take her outside, another potty area trip. And then I'm going to bring her inside, and I'm going to put her either in the X pen near me with something to chew on, like a Kong that I froze with cool stuff in it, or maybe a bully stick or an antler. Or I'm going to say, "You know what? She's pretty environmentally focused and she'll get really busy and start making a lot of noise, or she's really too into me and start whining for me." So if that's the puppy you have, that puppy would go in a crate in another room.
Okay. Now, speaking of crate in another room, Goose is starting to get, I don't know what you call it, Velcro dog-ish. So when we put him in a crate, we're trying the crate training a couple times a day, but he cries the whole time, and he's pretty loud. So even if we put him in the furthest room in the house, you can still hear him here. What are some things we can do? Like, I know we've been working on this, but it just doesn't seem to be going away. I don't know how to help him.
So one of the things I was thinking about with him is, I'm not so sure if it's the crate that bothers him as much as the absence of you guys.
Yeah.
And so we're going to just say flat out, he's got to sleep in a crate, right? That's non-negotiable.
Yeah, he does.
So we're going to go through it at night. And is he okay at night?
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
But he's in the room with a human.
Right. So during the day, let's do this. Let's do some tethering in the room that you're in. And so tethering, just a quick review, is you are going to put an eye screw in the wall by the baseboard. You're going to clip a carabiner clip into that. You can tether him to a leash, or you can buy something called last leash, because it's the last leash you'll buy, and which is a cable tie out like 3 or 4 feet. And you can use that on his collar if you think that he's going to chew the actual leash off.
Okay.
You're going to be in the room with him, but you're going to practice him being away from you and having a little more frustration tolerance and not losing his mind when you're ignoring him and talking and doing whatever you're going to do in that room.
Okay.
Progressively, you're going to start doing planned departures. He's going to be in the room. He's learned to be chill. And you can also put like a little mat for him, and you're going to leave the room. And you're going to leave the room for 3-4 minutes and then come back. No big deal. Just like not even acknowledging him. And I find that people do that. They trigger their dog to act in a way they don't like. So if the dog had an issue with the crate, sometimes they put them in and they're like, okay, Rover, I'll be back. Like, don't be nervous. And the dog is like, oh, wow, I guess this is the time where I start to lose my mind. So these planned departures can desensitize him to the idea of you leaving. In addition, I'm thinking about the crate, and I'm wondering if we could get one of those round beds that I showed you. They're almost like a nest.
Uh-huh.
And I'm wondering if something like that will comfort him, because it's soft on all sides. And like I told you, my golden, who's like 49 pounds, that bed was made for a 20-pound dog, but she curls herself in it in the living room, and she loves it.
It's amazing how
The other
small
thing we could do is we could think about the X pen. So that would be my second step. After the tethering is going well, then I would put the X pen, which is like a play pen, around him, because now I want him to start seeing a barrier. I want him to start looking at you through the bars, basically. And my other thought is, if the crate that you have is properly sized, maybe we go up a size or two.
Okay.
And like, we don't like to do that for housebreaking issues, but there have been cases of dogs who need to be in a giant crate and they just feel better. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you, this is crazy. We do this for dogs who have a problem housebreaking, who soil the crate. And it's called hay training. And I didn't invent this. This has been around forever. But basically, you get a bale of hay. And everybody's like, okay, no, we're not even going to do this. And you put the dog, I use a plastic crate. I don't use a wire one, because then the hay falls through.
Okay.
So get your plastic airline crate and you put the hay in it. And the hay should be about knee deep, or like half the height of the dog. So when they go in there, they're literally in a nest. And the dogs that have separation issues, they find it so comforting and cozy. Like, they don't need to be upset because they feel something on all sides of them. And it's the same thing for the dogs who are having accidents in their crate. For whatever reason, I think it's the comfort. They just don't go. And then the transition from that is you take handfuls out every couple of days until you've got nothing. It is a holy mess. If you do this, if anybody does this, put down like a big lawn trash bag on the floor and then put the crate on it. But I've used it probably, in all the time I've been training, I've probably used it 24 times, and every single time it's worked magic. But that's why I'm going to the bed first, because I don't want you to have to go out and buy a bale of hay.
Yeah, I'm going to put that on Jared's to-do list just to be funny. I'm like, Kathy said we had to buy a bale of hay in Puerto Rico. Good luck. Good luck.
Fine, you must have donkeys somewhere.
somewhere, but Jared's got to find it.
Amazon, they have everything. There you go.
Okay, so the crate, should it be one that he can see through? We have one that's plastic, and it's just got some tiny windows along the sides. And then just the grate in the front. Should we go to one that's all grate so he can see?
Yeah, I would go to a wire.
Okay.
And my preference for that is, it's not so much the manufacturer Midwest, but I just want a collapsible crate. I want one that folds down like a suitcase with like 4 or 5 cool moves. There's other kind of metal crates and they're less expensive, but you have to line up the panels and then you have to slide a bar down. So it's a nightmare.
Okay. Collapsible.
Don't want to do that.
It is. He's starting to outgrow this one. This was from another dog, so we were looking for the next one.
Yeah, and maybe go over the size you think you should be. And you know what? If you send me a picture of him in the crate, I'll advise.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so now we're helping him be away from us. Now, how do we get him from not barking when people come to the door?
Okay, so part of that is definitely going to be that you've set it up so when you know somebody's coming, he's already occupied, right? Like the best thing in the world, whatever that is. It's a Kong with baby food in it. It's an antler that you soaked in chicken broth. He's like, I never get this stuff. I am so happy. So that's the first thing. Now, is it a doorbell or are people knocking?
Knocking. And he hasn't yet, but I want to prevent it. And for our
Right.
listeners who are like, I don't have a puppy, how do we do this when they start to get older? How do we prevent it? All that stuff.
So now again, it varies. Like some people want their dogs to bark. And then, so they want the barking, but they want to say, all good, that's enough, and have it stop. But let's talk about the person who doesn't want the dog barking, like the Zoom situation. So what I would do is I would record the thing that triggers the bark, which means that you have to have your dog out, like on a walk or in the yard or being occupied, so that when you trigger the sound, they don't bark, because we're going to record this. So it's going to be the knocking sound and then pause like 10 seconds and then the knocking sound and pause, or the same thing with the doorbell. And then you have it on your phone. So now we're going to have a training session and you're going to cut up high value stuff, really high value stuff like chicken or turkey or bacon. Of course, check with your vet to make sure your dog can eat these things, but that's what we use a lot in our training. So I set my recording, I play it, and it's knock, knock, knock. It's a low volume. And the dog alerts to it, and I shove food in their mouth. And they're like, what? And I do it again, and I shove food in their mouth. They're like, this is amazing. And so what I'm doing is I'm reconditioning what they think they get when that happens. So now I'm getting an appetitive response versus a barking, like hysterical, cranked up response. And you play it at low volume and you go to higher volumes, and then you start to use the real door. And you can even have the dog on a leash and you're knocking on the door and feeding them. So we're going to completely rewire it. Now, when they have training and they're not a puppy, then what we're going to do is we're going to add this to the go to place command. And I have a video, and I'll send it to you, or maybe I have, of the Labradoodle who, when the doorbell rings, he runs across the house to his place and stays there. He doesn't have to say a word. It's the cue of the doorbell.
Ah, that's magic. Yeah, we got a little place thing for him, and he's learning to sit on it for an extended period of time. But when people come to the house, he has a hard time paying attention and staying there.
So that would be a great opportunity for a tether, right? Okay. So I'd set my tether up right behind that place bed.
Okay.
And then, so he can't leave. Okay. And there's a lot of reinforcement happening, and the people are walking by and ignoring him, and you're standing there and like handing him salami. It's just, look at it this way. Everybody puts the value when you don't know, right? You put the value on the wrong thing. So a perfect example is when you let your dog out of the crate. You come home, you're like, yeah, and you're building all this value. Coming out of the crate is value enough, but then on top of it, you add the party that you throw for him. So when I let my dogs out of the crate, I reach in, I clip on the leash, I say nada, and then I go outside, and that's where the party is. But when my dog goes in the crate, I'm like, wow, yay, throwing in the turkey and getting all this stuff, and I shut the door. So anytime you wonder why your dog is doing something, you have to ask yourself, where did I build the value? Same thing on a walk. You go on a walk, people are like, can I pet your puppy? And can my dog see your dog? And I'm always like, not right now. They just threw up or they're sick. I just say what I have to say to get you to not try to do that. Because if you let your puppy see everybody on a walk and greet every dog on the walk, you're taking the value and you're putting it externally away from you. And then you have a dog who pulls and lunges and can't wait to get to everybody else and then ignores you. It's like a bad boyfriend. You're out and all your dog wants to do is see other people. Like, that's insulting. So I build it the other way. My dog looks at a person, I shove food in their mouth. Dog looks at a dog, shove food in their mouth. So I have a dog who goes, hey, there's a dog. Where's my cookie? And as they get older, they know training. So they're like, let's play a game. And so I get that kind of engagement. So it's easy. You just have to think about that every time you have a problem that you'd like to fix.
Okay. Yeah. We bought so many treats. Like, we buy more treats now for the dogs than we do our kids.
Welcome to dog world.
And I'll tell you what, sometimes our hands from holding those treats, oh man, lots of goodness there. We're watching.
I know, especially when you're doing something that has like a fishy or a barbecue-y thing, like you're done. Bleach wipes.
Okay, good. Oh my gosh, you gave so much good stuff here. So, what else? We're wrapping down on time. What else do you recommend for a business owner to do with their dog to be able to just let them work or do the things they need to without disrupting their work?
I think that people, especially with the puppy, they don't pre-plan. And pre-planning, it's like, you know what? You have kids, I have kids. Remember when you were going to go out, you're going to go to a restaurant or something when people could, you would pack a bag, right? You'd have all these things pre-planned. You'd make sure everything was set up, and then you would go and have a successful, hopefully, adventure. That's what it's like owning dogs. You have to meet their needs. And it doesn't matter if you're on a Zoom call with the president. Like, if you haven't met their needs, they really don't care. All they care is about the things that are important to them. And that is, they have to go to the bathroom, they need a drink, they need something to do, their body needs to be tired, their brain needs to be tired. So I would tell anybody, before you get on that call, stick it in your calendar like it's part of the meeting. 45 minutes before you have to be on that call, plan to work with your puppy. And that's a walk, that's pottying. And like 15 minutes before go time, it is go time for the puppy. Take him back out and make sure he's good. And then you're not going to have that guilt either, right? So guilt kills dog training. We say it all the time. You're like, oh my God, I'm putting him in the crate again. It has to happen. It's like when you had a toddler and they were in a playpen, like that's because they would run around the house and do damaging things to themselves. You can also add white noise. I think that's an overlooked thing. If you have I don't want to say it, Alexa. Every time I say it on a Zoom thing, it goes off.
I was like,
So,
wait, what did you spell? I got it.
if I say it, it'll start talking.
Yeah,
You can ask it to play white noise. I'll tell you another thing, and this is totally off topic, but I used that a lot during the early stages of the Rona for people who couldn't get out with their puppies. I would say, tell it to play city noises. Tell it to play whatever noises, farm noises. Like, you could get your puppy exposed to a lot of new things just by having that particular unit play these sounds. And for the people who were going to be in the city, but they weren't going now, or they had a second place there, but they couldn't get to it, like playing these sounds at gradually increasing volume really helped their puppies understand that there's other sounds in the world besides them on a Zoom call or the sounds of the household. So white noise wins the day. But if you have a puppy and you've not gotten out and the socialization isn't done, think about using that as a piece of that.
I love that. I love that. They tell you the first time we took Goose to the beach, he freaked out because he'd never heard crashing waves before. And we couldn't even get him even close to the water. And so we just held him, we got him there. And then the next day we got him a little closer. And then by the third day, he's like, I don't even know this. Or it doesn't even bother me. But I thought that was super fascinating. You don't realize how much you have to put into a dog until you take your training and you realize, okay, this is why my other dogs acted this way. And even this is why my kids act this way. It is because of how you teach this. Like, it is so, so good. Goose is now 12 weeks and he is such a great puppy. We love having him around. I mean, minus, bless his heart, the anxiety, we're working on that. But I mean, he's almost potty trained. Woohoo!
Right.
No accidents for a few days. We're super happy about that. He comes when we call him at this point. It's because you're teaching us how to do that. And so we are so appreciative of you.
And you're doing so great. I mean, information is great, but if you don't follow through and actually do it, like those adventure walks you've been doing, if you don't follow through and do it, it doesn't help. So good for you.
And we actually have family night. So we watch your videos as a family. So everybody's on the same page. We're using the same words. We're following through the same way. Everybody has to be on the same page. Because if someone's saying stop and someone's saying sit, it's going to confuse him. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of Kathy family nights around.
And it's fun too, right? It's like, I think everybody feels a sense of purpose. Everybody feels a sense of ownership of the great job that's being done. You know, like, I contributed to the dog being awesome. And a great dog gets so many more opportunities to visit, to travel, to just be with you all the time versus a dog who's always in the yard or always in a crate because you can't control it. So yeah. It's a very rewarding process.
He goes everywhere with us right now. except to restaurants. We don't take him to restaurants. Okay, so tell us where people can find out about you. Like, where can they get more information, help with their dogs? And I love what you say. You say, I help, what do you say? I help people like their dogs or other people like their dogs. What's your phrase, your catch line?
We say it's for the dog that everybody loves to have around.
Yes, that's what it is.
And so I will give you a link to the wait list from my puppy course,
Okay.
which we are still getting up and ready. It should be ready soon. And yeah, we're just really excited about that. It's the puppy prep course. But I have a website, kathysantodogtraining.com. And on there, you can get links to my other courses. If you happen to be in New Jersey and you want to train your dog with me, we also do Zoom classes, Zoom lessons. We're snowed out here in Jersey, day 2. So we spent yesterday and today doing classes on Zoom, which is amazing. We love doing that. We love connecting with our students. So yeah.
Yeah, you've been helping me. I'm in Puerto Rico. So I know those Zoom calls are gold.
I need to do it in home, especially now with 16 inches of snow. I definitely need to go to Puerto Rico.
You do. Come help us with something.
That's right.
Awesome. Kathy, thank you so much for everybody listening. I'm going to, do you know what? Can I just say a link and then we'll pretty link it? So go to becauseIcanlife.com/puppy. And that will send you to Kathy's site, which right now is a wait list, but get on that wait list because I'll tell you what, those videos, we've gotten sneak peeks of those videos. We're watching with the kids and our dog is amazing. We've had so many people compliment Goose and say, if I had a dog like that, I would get a puppy or I would get a dog. And I'm like, well, we've been training with him for a while. We still have a long ways to go, but he's done really, really well. And it's because of your training. So yay, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great being here.
All right, before we dig into the top 10 takeaways with Kathy, I have a confession. You ready for it? So I actually recorded another podcast episode right before this one with a gal named Shira Raleigh. And that podcast episode is coming up shortly. And you know how in this podcast with Kathy, she talks about prepping your dog like you would prep a baby? Well, I didn't. And so, oh my goodness, Jared is out taking the kids to dinner, and I'm recording this podcast with Shira. And all of a sudden I hear this rustling in the background, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my door is open, and I just glance over, and Goose is going to town with an Amazon package that was open and like the brown fluffy packaging material literally looks like a bomb went off out there. So I kind of failed, or I learned that I really need to prep my dog before I go into podcast interviews. Like what Kathy just taught us really is the truth. You have to prep your dog. And I didn't. I just jumped into batching my podcast episodes, and I get to pay the price of going to clean up after. So that takes us to the top 10 things. And number 10 being prep your dogs before you go into interviews, before you go into your power hours. Make sure that they can't get into things that they think is fun. I mean, it was a party for him, right? Yeah, not a party for me. So that's, maybe that should have been number 1, but I put it as number 10 because it's right on my mind. Okay, next thing, number 9, dog training is very similar to raising kids. I didn't think about that until I took Kathy's training. Number 8, the more that I learn about training, the more I can see the things that made my other dogs that I've had do the things that they do. Where was Kathy? Like, I don't know, forever ago. I didn't even know about her. Oh, I wish I would have known just some of the basic things about how to train a dog before I had dogs in my life. Plan family learning nights so that everybody is watching the same training videos, so that everybody's on the same page when you want your dog to do certain things like sit or stare? How to even, when you open the door, what are the procedures so that they don't knock your people over when they come to the door? That's one thing that we did as a family. It was family night. We still do it. And we're like, okay, we're going to practice on getting Goose to be quiet when people come to the door. Like, what are the phrases that we're using and how are we going to stay consistent as a family? I think that is super, super vital to training and keeping consistent with your dog and your children. The next one, because I lost count, because I got a whole mess to clean out over here, is we didn't use dog food. Like, we just didn't pour it in a bowl. We actually used it to train Goose, and we still do. That gave us so many more teaching opportunities with Goose, and I know he learned so much faster that way. The next one, we've spent a lot more money on Goose than we have with our kids lately. I know. He's like another member of the family. Number 4, because I think that's what number I'm on. 4 is following through with your dog after you give him a command is absolutely essential. Number 3, Kathy is a true dog whisperer. She speaks another language with these dogs, and these dogs tell her how humans should interact with dogs. The second thing, did you know dog training can actually be done on a Zoom? What? I know, magical virtual world that we live in now. And then it leads me to number 1 is if you have a dog, if you're getting a puppy, really, go check Kathy's training courses out. You can check it out at becauseIcan.com/puppy. This training literally has changed our family's life with a dog. Kathy is truly a genius around this. And I feel very, very blessed to have a dog that people actually like to be around now. So go check out her stuff. Yeah, you're going to learn a few things and a few things that you didn't know you needed to learn. All right. Hope you like this episode. I'm going to go clean up a mess and I'll see you next week.